Welcome to TradeTheMBI.com. My name is John. This is a discussion of the DOMEGA indicator, and you happen to see it right here. What we're seeing is a typical overall chart. And where does the DOMEGA come from? What is it good for? How do I use it? Well, let's go over some of those details. Initially, it is an expansion of our ERH indicator, which was the expanded ratio histogram. And let's take a little bit closer look at those two. What we have here was a series of various strings that were combined, a bunch of subset fractals, and there are about 6 more additional lines with this. What we've done is condensed it, removed a bunch of those, and then created a visual compilation so that you can see with a little bit more clarity and not have as many. But what you will notice is there's a consistency of the white line is the same, and the cyan line here is also identical. We've removed the orange and yellow, but they exist within here and are incorporated in the new red line. So let's take a closer look at just the DOMEGA by itself and what we would be looking at. Just like a traditional indicator, and this is what I try to do, give the lines a similar kind of feel to a normal stochastics or something like that, but obviously the numbers are very different and calculated in an enormously different way. But you'll get a move from below with the red line above the white, which would be considered a primary signal, though we look for an aggregate of 2 out of 3 utilizing one additional indicator of the power mo. Our second signal is based off of the 0 line and the cyan moving above or below it. And in this particular case, when the cyan moves below, you have a bullish move as long as you have a buy signal from the crossover of the red DOMEGA. And inversely, when we get a crossover to the opposite direction, like there was right here, you would have a sell, particularly with the cyan moving above 0. And that one took a little bit before it finally caved in. We happen to be looking at the ES. So again, the buy crossover taking place right here. In this particular case, the cyan above 0, so you don't quite have your signal until it drops below there. And once you get underneath, you've got yourself an effective buy. Now, in this particular case, you got a pretty decent spread to there, and it just took a little bit longer for it to finally react to the upside with that. We can scroll back randomly in time. Let's just kind of find a spot back here. Well, this is a good dip. We can also then utilize the idea of oversold versus overbought in that we have this -7, -13. When you see dips below this -13, we have what can be considered an extreme oversold condition. Likewise, when we get well above the +8 or even up to that 13, that rarely happens. You would have what are considered, astronomically overbought. A secondary item to look for when you see these particular charts, the cyan line above the red and the white, typically bearish to flat kind of movement with price. When the cyan is below the red and white, you tend to have more of a bullish streak. So you tend to want to look for those pivots where that takes place, because it's normally where you're going to get some kind of behavior from the market. A little bit of a flat run right here. So you can see dip below right over here and then moved across up, and then you get your series of sell signals. It takes a little bit longer for the DOMEGA to give you sell triggers in that, and we typically then utilize it in conjunction with the power mode 2, and so we can utilize that to describe 2 of 3 signals, 3 of 3. If we get 2 buys where we have the white, in this case for the power mode, moving above magenta is a buy, cyan below 0, as well as a crossover, you have all 3 of them in alignment, and you usually get a nice pop from there. We can get into a little bit more of an elaborate setup where you end up with the cyan moving above the magenta and pivoting from there. Tends to give nice buys. Now let's see if we can scroll back quite a ways in time. Just randomly. There we go. So in this particular case, you can see right here, buy crossover comes at the same time you dip below the 0 for a nice buy. Kind of faded over a little bit at that particular point. And so you'll see these various setups throughout daily market conditions. This kind of breaks up the mystery of DOMEGA, makes it a little bit simpler. Certainly for those that get into a lot more of the detail, we have expanded versions of setups that you can look for. But just from a basic standpoint of looking at a chart, it makes it easy. Trade well.